You were protecting Brigadier Mkhwanazi. That's the context.
So it wasn't about challenging and protecting anybody from being charged. It was purely to look at what are our obligations.
You were protecting Brigadier Mkhwanazi because you knew that, this doesn't bother us. And we know what we are going to do about it, which is nothing.
Should we now hold off on the disciplinary?
No, no, Mr. Behari, I'm sorry. No, Mr. Behari, I'm sorry. You repeat the same thing over and over. You haven't, it's simple.
What Chief Mapieye, Commissioner Spies, and Mr. Nqiza are complaining about concerning you is that you were protecting Brigadier Mkhwanazi. That's the context. Now, the issue Commissioner Baloyi is raising with you, which is IPID recommends that Ekurhuleni must institute disciplinary proceedings against Brigadier Mkhwanazi. What do? You do nothing about that, but what you do instead is to try to respond blow by blow to the criminal process that's been instituted and which has not been referred to Ekurhuleni, and indeed it ought not to have been referred to Ekurhuleni. It has been referred to the Director of Public Prosecutions. That indeed is where a process of that nature resides. And you then try to respond to that process which is with the DPP, instead of responding to the recommendation to Ekurhuleni. That, I suggest to you, ties in with a complaint made against you by the Chief of Police, Chief Mapieye, Commissioner Spies, and Mr. Nqiza. It actually ties in with that. Because you say, this one is within what we as Ekurhuleni can do. They recommend to us to discipline Brigadier Mkhwanazi. We are just going to be silent about that. It's within our control. What's not within our control is the criminal process. Let's go for the criminal process. Let's try to stop that criminal process. Let's try to show why it is unfounded. It ties in with a complaint by these three employees of Ekurhuleni. What's your comment to that?
Chair, firstly, on the IPID report, the departments were addressed to deal with the disciplinary directive. My issue was not about challenging the DPP instructions or whatever against the employee. Ours was to look at, from Mr. Kanye, when you say DPP is dealing with them, why are you not arresting them? If I was going to be protecting Julius, as the environment created, why don't you arrest him quickly? Why don't you arrest him in terms of the process? Even up to now, Chair, I'm not aware of the DPP having finalized those instructions. So it wasn't about challenging and protecting anybody from being charged. It was purely to look at what are our obligations I've got to respond to, because the implications of an officer or official that's been charged in terms of fraud and corruption, there are other implications in terms of which I will have to do a report to impact and so on. It was never, and in no way did I speak to Kanye to say that we want to challenge the investigation or the part of the DPP. That's their stories. That's there for them to deal with. But what is concerned is then when are we expecting, because we're going to proceed with that from the directive to Chief of Police and then to the HR, that's a disciplinary process. Mine was to see that bid in. How do we, for my purposes, in reporting to MPAC and Council, to give a full understanding of what is going on and what could be the other measures we implement to deal with it? So it's not about challenging. I agree. It's not about challenging any report.
Let's look at the heading of the letter written by Mr. Zulu and Mr. Mahwiting, which had your full support. You said earlier,
yes,
you even took it to the municipal manager, but that you wanted to correct some little administrative thing, but not so much the content of what the letter raised. Look at the heading, Volkswagen CAS 262/03/2023, corruption, fraud, and corruption, and then in brackets, Julius Dr. Mkhwanazi. The reference to the CAS number, CAS number, that's clearly the criminal process, and it is only that criminal process that this letter addresses. And the two people who have signed this letter are your juniors. And in fact, in so many words, in your statement before us today, you say you appointed Mr. Zulu because of his experience in prosecuting. So you basically wanted to attack the criminal process. Even if you're doing it within the municipality, the idea was to say, there's nothing here. That's the point I'm making. And indeed, if you go through the entire letter, it deals with the charges, and it will say, the elements of such and such a criminal offense are A, B, C, D. A, B, and C have not been satisfied because of A, B, C, D reasons. It's trying to puncture holes through the possibility of any criminal charges. So it's on that basis, and you identified with this. You identified with this letter. It is on that basis that I suggest to you that there may well be, and I think that's an understatement to say there may well be substance in the attack by Chief Mapieye, Commissioner Spies, and Mr. Nqiza, which is to the effect that you were protecting Mr. Brigadier Mkhwanazi.
Chair, the issue of that letter was, yes, it refers to the criminal processes, because my interest would have been to report on that. I initiated that issue, I referred it to you in Jabulu to look at the elements. What do we need to look at in terms of my report to MPAC and to Council, where we cover this and we say to them, this evidence is linked to that. The DPP process can never be a challenge for us internally. The only issue we get involved in terms of the city is any of the city officials who are charged as a result of their holding an office representing the city. But not, if the cases were against Julius Mkhwanazi, it should have been then proceeded by the DPP. Mine and my interest in the team, in speaking to Jabulo specifically, was to say, let's look at the issue, because when you do our report, and that is why the document never went out. It was in preparation for engaging with that once we received the DPP, to look at our finalization in terms of what report do I have to do, from a compliance report to MPAC, and to that to say that this is what the engagements are, this is how the fraud is covered, this is how the corruption issues are covered, and that is the report we did. We have no power to engage with.
And nothing at all about the recommendation which concerns something that was within the remit of the municipality, the recommendation to discipline. Completely silent on that.
Chair, because that was the process in terms of the directive by IPID to the Chief of Police for the disciplinary process. That would have been accepted, would have continued that way. My interest was then to look at then what is our reports in terms of compliance. One of the delegated functions is for me to report on compliance of non-compliance issues to council and to the mayor and to the city manager. So those are the functions I was looking at from the criminal aspect.
I suggest again that you were not in the least bothered by that recommendation because you knew that, this doesn't bother us. It's within what we can do within the municipality that doesn't bother, and we know what we are going to do about it, which is nothing.
Chair, I was not aware, I don't know where that process has taken or what. I was not involved in that HR process or the issue of MPA in terms of the IPID report. I did not accept there was going to be nothing because mine was focusing on the other aspect. That departments, they are responsible for that. They got the directive on the disciplinary process and they ought to have done that. It's not about me knowing that there was going to be nothing. Mine was to say that this is what our purposes are. I was very clear to DH Zulu. Let's look at these charges because there'll have to be a report for me to counsel to deal with those issues.
I find it strange. I find it, this is one document from IPID. It deals with the criminal process which has been referred to the DPP and then the recommendation to IPID. You have instructed Mr. Zulu to deal with this and he's assisted by Mr. Mkhwanazi on that document. I do not understand this thing about that document being completely silent on the issue about the recommendation to discipline. Because if in your mind that was an issue that had to be attended to by Chief Mapia, I would have imagined that this document should have said so. We have dealt only with the criminal process because I, as the head of legal, Mr. Behari, believe that the recommendation to discipline falls within Chief Mapia and that he is going to attend to that. So I'm going to be silent on that. This document does not say, it's just silent on that.
See, it is silent on the disciplinary process because the directive came there from IPID. The parties who it was addressed to the Chief of Police to continue with that process. Mine was only focusing on the criminal aspect. Hence, it's silent in that document that we didn't want to cloud the issues about seen to be attacking that the finding or the directive on the disciplinary process. Ours was purely to do the report on the fraud and corruption, to make the findings once the Mkhwanazi had confirmed, because he did give us an undertaking, he'll confirm once the evidence is finalized. And then we could have included that in my report to MPAC and the Council.
Thank you.
Mr. Behari, this letter or this report from IPID, what suggestion does it contain?
Let us say the document was not finalized. It was not.
No. I'm not asking you about a finalized document. Okay. Your letter at paragraph 11 says, respectfully, the suggestions of IPID, given such material omissions and failure to thoroughly investigate, risks the city in any further processes herein. The question, which raises the question, what suggestions did you see contained in this IPID document?
We focused on that issue of the DPP part.
Is that a suggestion? No. Did you consider it a suggestion?
There's two aspects to it here. If you're saying to us as a city, proceed to discipline. Proceed to discipline. When you say then, however, so those are when we looked at the documents and the word term suggestion, of course, it could have been another word used. Hence, the document was never finalized. It was never sent out. It was still in its draft form to deal with it.
Let me stop you. Where is the suggestion? Your letter says the suggestions of IPID cannot be given effect to. They risk the city, you say, in any further processes. My question is, in this IPID document, what did you consider to be a suggestion in this IPID document?
As I said, Chair, we haven't finalized the full report. The suggestion was used at that stage when they drafted the document. Now, when we had finalized, it was finalizing a proper document in terms of addressing after we received to Kanye, we would have dealt with it. For me, the issue was, you're saying in the recommendations, this is the process for...
Can we agree the IPID document contains no suggestion to you, to the city?
Chair, there's no suggestion. Hence, I'm saying this document was not finalized.
I think we'll go quicker, Mr. Behari. Can we agree this letter, this report from, or this communication from IPID does not contain a suggestion to the municipality?
Chair, okay. The first part of that read initially opening, it was a directive.
It's an instruction.
Right.
Yes.
If I look at the titling of the document.
What do you want me to look at?
The titling of the document was a clear directive. It says to proceed with disciplinary.
No, it's not the title. There's a summary of allegations, which is paragraph 1, which summarizes, and then paragraph 2, case docket contents, and then that reads, in terms of section 30 of the IPID Act, read with a SALGA disciplinary procedure, you are hereby directed, yes, is that what you're looking for? You're hereby directed to initiate. Yes, that's an instruction. It's a direction to the city. Yes, it's an instruction.
Yeah.
It's not a suggestion.
No.
Okay.
Then the second part, if you go to the, I'm trying to find my document.
Yeah, you can find it. The second part in page 103, under the heading IPID recommendation, it says the IPID recommends that disciplinary steps be taken. And then it then concludes, however, docket is referred to DPP for decision. And then the conclusion, IPID awaits your report relating to when the disciplinary actions were instituted and how the matter was finalized to enable the institution to comply with the provisions of Section 30C of the IPID Act. And my question is, where in these paragraphs do you read what you refer to as a suggestion in your letter?
We were still looking into the latter part on page 103.
Which latter part? Where it says the docket is referred to the DPP for
above
decision.
That.
Sorry?
Okay. Above that.
Above that, it says, based on the above information contained in the case docket, the IPID recommends that disciplinary steps be taken.
Yes. So, Chair, where it was clear at the outset the directive comes through. So that was clear, we accepted that. Now, when we came to the second part we were dealing with then, what is the implication? Why would you have it necessity? If you're saying to us as a city, we recommend that you proceed with the disciplinary, and say that. Why was it then to come and say that, however, the document has been referred to? So we were still looking at that, Chair. That is why we did not finalize that document, to get the additional information. So that is what I'm saying. If
so you wanted IPID to give you what they gave to the DPP, so that you do what with it?
No, Chair. The issue was, if you're recommending disciplinary,
yes,
recommend it.
They've done so. Right. It's very clear. Yeah. They've directed and they've recommended in the concluding paragraphs.
The aspect of then, however, what must I, so you're saying to me, I'm recommending, I don't want to go into definitions of how we understood it, but it just means it gives a different, for me it meant that the word however actually contradicts what was being said above.
No, it doesn't. You see, you can't read this document selectively. The concluding paragraph says you must submit a report. So clearly in this paragraph and consistent with the recommendations, the direction and the recommendation, the concluding paragraph says you must submit a report about that disciplinary process. Now, your letter doesn't say anything about that. It doesn't say we cannot submit a report to you because we are not running a disciplinary hearing, so your concluding paragraph, we are not going to be able to meet it. In fact, your letter says the suggestion you make, after all these material omissions, your suggestion, right, will create problems for the city. I'm still to hear from an answer from you. What in this 3-page document did you consider to be a suggestion from IPID?
Chair, in looking at for our purposes,
yes,
the report for IPID on the disciplinary process will come from a different entity. It will come from
police. I've heard that. There's no value
so
in Mr. Behari, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to you. You've said that repeatedly. I'm asking you a simple question because on my reading of these 3 pages, I don't see a suggestion. I don't understand it to contain any suggestion. So that's where my question comes from. Help me see, like you, what did you consider to be a suggestion from IPID in this letter?
Chair, on the issue of the criminal aspects, and the last page 103 of that document, I'm saying that on the one hand you're saying we recommend disciplinary processes. However, now what does mean is, should we now hold off on the disciplinary?
No, no, Mr. Behari, I'm sorry. No, Mr. Behari, I'm sorry. We have only so much time. You repeat the same thing over and over. You haven't, it's simple. You can point me to a line which you considered to be a suggestion. I'm not asking you for an explanation. I've read the letter. I do not see any line in there that amounts to a suggestion. And I'm simply asking you, please point me to where you say it's a suggestion from IPID. It doesn't require explanation. If you want to say to me, however, docket is referred to DPP for decision, you considered it a suggestion, it is what it is. But I'm asking you, point to this letter, point a paragraph, a line, and say that's where the suggestion is.
Chair, in page 103.
Yes, 103, okay.
So mine is to say that when we read the document, but if you're saying we recommend disciplinary, say it and stop. And then you want to report on disciplinary, that is it. But when you're saying to me, however, it is sent to the DPP, it may just be an interpretation at the end of the day, but it was come to us. That is why we never finalized that letter. It was never sent out because we were still dealing with it.
One last try from me. Did you, where they say we recommend, the IPID recommends that disciplinary steps be taken, is that what you considered a suggestion?
The recommendation part, read together with...
No. I remember it's me who's trying to understand your evidence. So my question is formulated so that I can understand what it is you're saying. It doesn't help to say more if that's not what I'm trying to get clarity on. Am I to understand you to be saying in that paragraph where it says IPID recommendation, that paragraph is what you understood to be a suggestion, or it's a suggestion you are referring to in your letter?
Chair, as I said, we had not finalized that letter. So we're talking to a letter that we still have to look at the full content of it. At that stage, when they use the word suggestion, it looked at as if they were not certain in terms of, by the use of the word however.
Okay.
So the directive on that is important. It goes through that HR process and so on. The report asks for the HR to say whatever you want with that. But from a criminal aspect, dealing purely with the DPP, that is where our interest was. And dealing with that issue, and Mr. Kanye, tell us what
So what did you understand to be the suggestion in that paragraph?
I understood to be, they proceed with the recommendation is to do this, and dealing with the Kanye and the criminal process. However, it is the DPP's instructions.
No, sorry. IPID recommendation is the heading. It says we recommend disciplinary action, and then it concludes, however, docket is referred to DPP for decision. What do you consider to be the suggestion in this paragraph?
Chair, on the first part of the letter, it is a directive issued by IPID.
To institute disciplinary proceedings.
Disciplinary action.
Yes, in that paragraph.
In that paragraph.
Yes.
You now come into the latter part of that in the same report.
Yes.
And you say now we recommend. We're recommending disciplinary action, which is the difference, as I read it, from directive.
And you've said that has nothing to do with you. It's an HR thing.
It's an HR process.
Okay, so we are clear. We are sorted with the first part. You're not concerned with HR, and so not concerned with the disciplinary action. Yeah. That leaves us now with, however, docket is referred to DPP for decision. Is that the part that you say is a suggestion? No. And it has to be, because it's the only part that is remaining under IPID recommendation, which has nothing to do with disciplinary action.
See, the disciplinary action part is the directive. The document must be read holistically. So the first part is you're directing to say, we're directing the disciplinary process be taken. So that will be covered between Chief Mapiyeye and HR. But then you go back in the same document and you now come and say the recommendation. So it's a softer approach to a directive.
Yeah.
And then you have to come on the issue and say that furthermore, however, And that is why it could have been interpreted to be a suggestion. Hence, we did not finalize the document, Chair. We did not finalize it because there were other information before we gave a proper document out.
Okay, all right. I guess I can't take it further, at least not this afternoon. Thank you, Chair.